We're back, as promised. The DMZ America podcast. I'm Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left. Hopefully, we don't sound as confused as Dianne Feinstein did yesterday at the Senate. Did you hear about that?
Oh, I did. I just saw her. I mean, there's no there. She's checked out. I'm sorry. I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
What
it's a
happened?
weekend at Bernie's type scenario. I mean, she basically look, she's been gone for 3 months. She's been back home in California being treated for shingles and whatnot. And she came back to the Senate, and two reporters asked her about some votes that she'd missed on various bills. And she was like, "You guys are wrong. I haven't been gone. I've cast those votes. I voted."
Oh no.
I mean, as you know, Scott, as a student of history and of parliamentary procedure, you can't zoom in a vote to the U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
You're either there or you're not. And when there's like a roll call, there's like a bell, right? Like in the Senate cloakroom and other places, and aides go scurrying in search of their senators. It's like,
Yeah.
Senator Feinstein, you have to roll down to the Senate floor and cast your vote. So yeah, the point is she's 89 years old. Look, I'm just going to say it. She's dying. And I don't get, Scott, why they don't want to let her go. I mean, California has a Democratic governor, Gavin Newsom. If Feinstein steps down, he appoints her replacement. California is a reliably blue state. Why would she not just step down?
Oh, well, she doesn't want to.
Yeah, but she doesn't know what she wants. I mean, she doesn't even know that she wasn't there.
The people around her don't want her to. I mean, her
what does
staff.
The Constitution do if someone? I mean, I guess she'd have to be impeached, right? Because that's the only remedy to get rid of someone who's mentally unfit to hold office.
I wonder if the state laws apply to Senate seats, and by this I mean if they have, obviously they have recall there because we've seen it happen there a number of times. Right. Mm-hmm. If the people of California say we really kind of want a non-drooling senator,
right?
And we recall her. I wonder if they can recall her. I have no idea. That's worth looking up. We'll have that answer for you on the next podcast.
Indeed.
Or not. We may or may not.
Anyway.
Anyways,
more likely we'll forget all about this.
So the Durham Report is out. He was appointed by the Trump administration to look into the weaponization of the FBI, to investigate the Trump-Russian collusion. Turns out, not surprising, a 300-page report I have not read. I'm sure Ted hasn't either. But
no, I flipped through it.
Did you really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what did you find out?
Well, I mean, basically, it's a repetition of everything that we already knew, Scott. I mean, look, here's the thing. There's this new phenomenon that started maybe about 20 years ago, where the headline of articles does not reflect the content thereof. And so, like, for example, the classic example was when they did the Florida recounts by the Miami Herald and various newspapers of the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore. And 7 out of 8 counting methods, including the most commonly used counting methods for the ballots, found that Gore would have carried the state of Florida. 1 out of 8 found that Bush would have. And all of the headlines in places like the New York Times said, Bush would have won anyway. Well, I mean, that's not at all what the content of the article said. But you'll see this over and over again. Now that I've mentioned it, you will just start to notice it. It's all over. I mean, it's sort of like a reflection of the fact that most people who forward an article to their friends or post it on their social media do not actually read the article that they are posting.
Yeah, I heard that.
And so we're living in a headline nation. And the headline in 2016 was Dirty Ruskies gave the election to Trump and cheated Hillary Clinton. Now, the thing is, I did something that I guess many of my Democratic friends did not do, which is I read the actual articles about the alleged Russian interference. And there was a lot of rank speculation. The only thing that was demonstrably true was that a company named the Internet Research Agency, the IRA, based in Russia, had purchased $200,000 worth of Facebook ads and had run them online during the 2016 election. Bear in mind, this was a $7 billion election, mostly spent by Hillary Clinton. Okay. So even if we just leave the story at that, there's no way that $200,000 of the most effective pro-Trump Facebook ads in the world could defeat a $7 billion colossus with big data experts and everything. It's just not possible. And that's at the time what the intelligence community concluded, that whatever Russia's role was in the 2016 election, it was not meaningful enough to make a difference. Now, the thing is, if you dig deeper, the IRA is certainly a Russian company, but it is not affiliated with or owned by the Russian government at all. It is one of the many millions of companies in Russia that are just private. Secondly, it was a clickbait farm. Thirdly, most of the ads that it ran, because it was a clickbait farm, most of the $200,000, they weren't even political. They had nothing to do with the 2016 election. Of the ones that were political, less than $100,000 worth, most of those were, wait for it, Hillary Clinton ads. So there's just literally no there at all from the very start. Now, that said, this was the story that the New York Times, Washington Post, and other deep state affiliated media outlets would not let go. And then it got all over the culture. It's something all of our Democratic friends believe and colleagues. You look at, for example, the SNL skits with that guy who played Putin, not wearing a shirt, always like making friends with Trump and telling Trump what to do. Everyone thinks that Putin was a stooge of the Russians. The thing is, it's just, there was no there from the very beginning. Now, that said, Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel in order to look into this. And Mueller spent years going through every piece of evidence. Every time someone from the Trump administration took a meeting with a Russian, it's all in there, right? Long story short, in 2019, the Mueller report came out, showed that there was no collusion whatsoever between the Trump administration and Russia. In fact, Russia, pretty much, they were hoping for good things and a rapprochement from Trump when he first took office. But by the end of 2017, they were kind of done with him, and they didn't think that would ever happen. And Russia's relations with the Trump administration were very poor from 2017 on. So that happened. The Durham Report is kind of a report about the Mueller investigation. And basically what it says is that there was never any reason to even launch an investigate the Mueller probe, because there was so little evidence, much less proof, that there was nothing to go on, and it should never have been launched as a full investigation or even a partial investigation, that there just wasn't any there. And that the whole Russia thing never held together, and that it's reaffirming not only that Trump and Russia did not collude in the 2016 election, but also that there was a lot of interference in that election, but really in favor of Hillary Clinton by the deep state, by the FBI and the CIA, including, but not limited to, that infamous letter signed by 51 former intelligence officers. And it goes on, it's over 300 pages. It's quite exhaustive, but the main takeaway, Scott, is that there was never any collusion, and we had never had any reason to think that there was.
Well, and then you team this up, and nobody's done this in any of the articles that I've read yet, with the Columbia Journalism Review a few months ago, came out with a report, a very extensive report on the New York Times coverage of Russia and Russian collusion, or alleged Russian collusion, that the New York Times continued to report it and continued to push the story forward even after they knew. Ted, they fucking knew that it was false.
Yeah.
But they had that narrative. And so this just actually reaffirms that, the FBI and others were still chasing a narrative that they wanted to chase because they believed it to be true, because they feel like Trump, and bear in mind, I disdain Donald Trump's a horrible, wretched, miserable human being. I
Stipulated.
mean, you don't have to pile on someone like that. But for some reason, the Democrats and the mainstream media, and by extension, some members in the FBI, felt that was they had to do that. It's so ridiculous. It was just like, and you and I have talked about, like, for instance, the first impeachment was absurd. It was absurd. Again, it was Russia. It was Russian collusion, and it makes no sense. If they'd gotten him on monuments, they would have nailed him to the wall. And should have.
Yep.
No, but they can't. They have to always go after, like, this guy's a monster, but he's not just a monster. He's a horrible, mean monster. Okay, we can. No, he's 10 feet tall, monster. Well, he's not. He's a little over 6 foot. No, no, just like, stop making shit up and just follow the facts wherever they may go. Believe me, the guy was, as Ted has pointed out several times, he's a real estate developer in Manhattan. There's got to be like 10 feet of schmutz on him.
No question about it. No question. He was the thing that I think we'll never know, because we don't get to go back in time and run a sim, right? But it does seem to me that there's a strong chance that there was an anti-Trump vote that made the difference here. And what I mean by that is there were a lot of people, swing voters, who were annoyed by the Democrats and their pomposity and their arrogance in their opposition to Trump, who voted for Trump, not because they liked Trump or really because they particularly hated Hillary, but because they really didn't want the establishment to get their candidate. And they could tell the fix was in. In other words, an election is supposed to be an environment in which two or more candidates get together, they argue about policy and personality, and they try to dig up scandals against each other, and the American people, the voters, decide, right? And they figure out what they want to do. But here you had the voters being told by people who were in government and in the media, who really kind of should just shut up during an election, but we're telling them how to vote, and telling them if they voted for Trump, it would mean that they were fascist. If they voted for Trump, it would mean that they were sexist or otherwise bad. And at a certain point, people were like, fuck you, I'll do whatever the fuck I want. And as much as I hate Donald Trump, I hate you even more.
Well, the fact that you touched on people who really wanted to tell the establishment to go fuck off. And what we're talking about here is the establishment looking back at them saying, no, fuck you. We're going to continue to follow a narrative that we know to be false and report it as the truth. And this is the New York Times. This isn't like,
right,
some shitty paper I work for.
The newspaper of record.
Yeah, it's absolutely bananas. So, this won't put it behind us. And how many of your liberal friends, and don't name names, obviously, but have you had conversations over the last 24 hours of them saying, this doesn't say anything, this didn't say it didn't happen?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
All right. And by the way, that's also what the editorial page editor, the editorial pages of the Washington Post, and I have not seen the New York Times editorials today. I've seen the op-eds, but they kind of all say the same thing, right? Which is like, well, it's really kind of convoluted. They're like, he didn't come back, he didn't find anyone who should be arrested, therefore there was no there. And it's like, well, this is like a book review of like a graphic novel that says there's too many pictures in this graphic novel. It's like, he wasn't tasked with finding people to arrest. He was tasked with finding out what happened and what went wrong and what could be done differently in the future. And he does all that. He recommends, he's like a Pollyanna. He says, oh, there should be further safeguards inside the FBI to reduce the chances, to mitigate the chances of politicization within the agency. And it's like, blah, 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 blah. But, whatever. The point is, he definitely did not, I think he delivered, he answered the question, but look, Democrats do not want to hear it. And, that's the world we live in. Trump's supporters do not care whether he raped a woman in a department store dressing room. They just don't care. Democrats don't care that their guy almost certainly, I'll say, accepted bribes from foreign countries and changed U.S. foreign policy in order to earn those bribes. They don't care. That's the world we live in. People like their candidate more. They hate their candidate more than they like their candidate, and that's what we are. We are in a hateocracy.
I love that. Well, welcome to the hateocracy, Ted.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, we're going to be back in just a jiffy, but we're going to be talking about a batshit crazy legislation that is going to be signed either today or tomorrow in Texas by Texas Governor Abbott. And we're going to be talking about trans. And one of those is going to piss you off. So you may want to stick around. Am I right, Ted?
Yes, for sure.